Scotland's date with destiny is edging closer, and the Tartan Army have moved south to Miami ahead of Wednesday's mammoth game with Brazil. In today's episode, we'll be building up to that game on Wednesday and keeping tabs on what's going on elsewhere in the rest of the tournament. Hello and welcome back to the Scotsman World Cup podcast after a little weekend break. In today's episode, I'm delighted to be rejoined by Lewis Anderson, who you met in our first episode, but he's now back after a little break. I'm setting this one up for you, Lewis. Have you been anywhere nice?
Just back from Boston. It's been a tremendous 10 days out with the Tartan Army in America. Brilliant. Must admit, it was out for the Haiti game.
Get him out of here.
Never seen.
We already did, I think, at the start.
Never seen scenes quite like it. It was just a tartan takeover, tremendous. And obviously, thankfully, came away with the 3 points that we needed from that game. Was home just before the Morocco game on Friday. Unfortunate that we've come away empty-handed there, albeit Morocco were probably, it's fair to say, on a different level. I don't think they, across both games, it's almost as if they've kind of kept a wee bit in reserve. That's the kind of feeling I've got from Morocco. They having scored so early in the match, kind of felt that they were going to kind of really press on, and I think a lot of the Tartan Army were fearing the worst at that point, but actually coming away with a 1-0 defeat kind of feels like a small victory, actually, given how poorly Scotland started the game.
And as I so often am, you've seen him, you've heard him. I'm joined also by Edinburgh Evening News and Scotsman writer Barry Anderson. Barry, I've missed you this weekend. How's your weekend been, and how do you assess that Morocco game?
Yeah, my weekend was okay. Quite quiet. Enjoyed some of the football. Didn't really enjoy that Morocco game too much, if I'm being honest. It just felt like a lot of people just felt that Scotland, when they actually took the shackles off and went for Morocco, they did cause them a bit of bother. Not too many clear chances, but I felt they acquitted themselves well when they put their mind to it and had a go. And I'm just like you have been so often in recent years, you're wishing, well, surely we could have done that earlier and maybe caused them a bit more bother. But I'm also, the other side is I'm thinking, well, you know, if we're set up to be hard to beat, and that's what gets us through this group and gets us to the knockout rounds, then I'll take it. So, kind of conflicted, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way. There was the last 20 minutes, you thought, well, where's that come from? But look, it's done and it's dusted, I guess. You can talk about the penalty decisions and the performance. I was going to say we know what we need, but Barry, I think you might be better placed for this. I was never that great at maths. I know that what we basically need to do, Barry, is win. But if we don't win, what do we need for those who are, like myself, mathematically challenged?
Well, I'm mathematically challenged as well, so I'm exactly the same boat. Yeah, I mean, let's just beat Brazil 4-0 and that removes all the confusion. That's the easiest thing to do. But simply, if Scotland beat Brazil, they're through. If they draw against Brazil, they'll be through as well. If they lose by a single goal, 1-0 for example, then there's still a strong probability that they would go through as one of the best third place teams. If they lose by 2 goals, it's less likely that they'll go through, but still not impossible. And if they lose by 3 goals or more, then I think you can forget it. That is the rough kind of summary as far as I understand it. As it stands, we are well placed in amongst all the rest of the third place teams, but other teams have still to play their second game, and then obviously everybody's to play their third game. So this is very much subject to change. But as it stands, Scotland will play Germany back in Boston on Monday, the 29th of June at 9:30 kickoff in the last 32.
I suppose if you're looking at it in that way, and based on the conversation we've just had about the performance against Morocco, which I felt was purposely defensive for a while. I mean, there was no shots on target. It did get a little bit better towards the end. Questions started being asked. Penalty decisions were called for, and you can hum and har either way on those decisions. It was slightly better as the game wore on when Scotland went for it. But based on what you've just said, you're Steve Clarke. How do you set up against Brazil? Do you kind of try to not get beat by too many, or do you go by the old adage of attack is the best form of defence?
Yeah, I think if you're Steve Clarke and knowing that, you look at the evidence of Steve Clarke's teams, Scotland teams over the years, I don't think there'll be too much risk taken. I would expect the team will probably be fairly similar to what it was against Morocco. And Kieran Tierney, I think, is unlikely to play. But I don't think there'll be too many more changes. I hope there's a little bit of change up front, because I just don't feel that we've been positive enough. We've not created too much in that sense, but I do think it'll be pretty much a kind of 4-4-1-1 stroke 4-5-1 setup, and hope to try and contain Brazil. Clearly, let's not lose an early goal this time. That's got to be one of the most important things, and see how long we can keep it tight, frustrate them, and then hopefully, I would think, open up a little bit in the second half. But as long as it stays 0-0, then Steve Clarke's going to be happy, because our point, I think it's been 99% certain to guarantee Scotland going through. So, yeah, I would take that right now.
Lewis, I think we've started getting the calculators out, let's be honest. We know that a win does what it does, and that's going to get Scotland through. We know that a draw probably will as well. When it comes to a defeat, and let's be honest, Brazil are 5-time champions for a reason. They're not the Brazil that they were, but they're still a good Brazil team, which means that the calculators are sort of coming out. Based on the first two performances, Haiti, a win was in the bag. That's all that really mattered. We can debate it till kingdom come. Morocco, Scotland left that game with regrets. So we've seen 2 games with Scotland now. We've got to see Brazil for a game against Morocco as well. We'll see them against Haiti as well. But I suppose you would have expected them to beat Haiti. How are you feeling ahead of the game? Because it's not the Brazil you would have faced in France 1998, but it's still Brazil, and Scotland still needs something of some sort, but we don't quite know what. So it's a weird feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it almost, to a certain degree, it feels like the final game against Hungary, the kind of build up to it. I know we've got 3 points on the board on this occasion, but given how Clarke set up so defensively against Morocco, which was to be expected, but let's face it, I think we all expected there to be a few more shots on target than there was. And it wasn't really until the introduction of a few of the changes in the second half that Kenny McLean was very bright when he came on. Ben Gannon Doak, he just gives you something different, doesn't he? He's electric. And against a Brazilian defence that leaked goals throughout the qualifying campaign, I'd be keen to see him thrown in from the start for this game. It is a strange feeling, We know it's, as you touched on, this isn't a great Brazilian team. They look, to me, at times like they're playing like a team of individuals. They don't look like a settled squad. I know Carlo Ancelotti, they've had a bit of an upturn since he came into the job, but Scotland will get a couple of opportunities in this game, and it's vital we take them. And I'm with Barry. I would like to see a bit more of a physical presence up front. I'd be keen to go with maybe Lyndon Dykes. I was pleasantly surprised he went with Shea Adams actually the other night as the lone striker. And Scott McTominay, who, let's face it, there was the big issue we had at the Euros was our big game players didn't turn up. Our John McGinn's, our Scott McTominay's, and I kind of feel that's been the case of the first 2 group stage games this time around. I know McGinn scored against Haiti, but he's been incredibly wasteful in possession across both games. I don't think McTominay's been as influential as we'd necessarily like him to be, and it's taken a big defensive shift. I must give Jack Hendry a lot of credit. I think he's been Scotland's best defender across these 2 games. So, look, Scotland are going to have chances, I think, against this Brazil team. Obviously, Rafinha's out, which is a massive blow for Brazil, I think. So I just want Clarke to be a bit more positive. That's all. Learn your lessons from the past 2 Euros. Because the Hungary game was just dire to watch. It was just horrendous. We didn't. With so much on the line, we just offered nothing, and there was a huge kind of sense of deflation on the back of that. And inevitably, we've just handed Steve Clarke a 4-year contract. If Scotland go out and we get battered by Brazil and drop out of the group stage, then there'll be the growing clamour again of why have we given Steve Clarke a 4-year deal? He needs sacked, blah blah blah. So this is a massive game for Steve Clarke. He'll know that, and I'm cautiously optimistic. Put it that way.
Talked about a few changes there, Barry, and I think what really surprised me. Now, look, people will see behind me, I'm obviously a huge fan of Ross Stewart. I always like to get one Sunderland reference in here whenever I can, if anyone hasn't noticed behind me there. But Ross Stewart makes sense to me being in the squad, and I understand him coming on. But the biggest surprise for me was that Shankland didn't get on the pitch where every other striker did. That really, really surprised me, because I think, rewind back 10 days ago, we were on the show, maybe even less, and myself, Mark, Lewis, yourself as well, you as well, Barry, were talking about how Shankland might be the man that Scotland need to be sort of fit and firing and getting the goals, because he's offers something a little bit different in terms of an actual goal scoring ability, and yet he doesn't get on the pitch in a game where you haven't had a shot on target. Was there a surprise that he didn't play, or didn't even see a minute against Morocco and every other striker did?
I think that in general, I would say Shankland's got that goal scoring instinct, but I quite like the thought of a Shankland-Ross Stewart partnership. I don't think we'll see that against Brazil, to be perfectly honest. I think the two of them could combine together pretty well. Yeah, but I think you're more likely to see Dykes. I think Dykes is probably the most likely one up front on his own, and a kind of 4-4-1 system behind him, with probably McTominay as the one in behind him. That's more likely what I would expect. Shankland didn't have his best game against Haiti, probably acknowledged that himself, but I don't think Scotland were, as a team, were particularly brilliant against Haiti, so he's not the only one in that boat. But yeah, I mean, if you're chasing a goal, you should be bringing Shankland on. The thing is, against Morocco, I don't think that the coaching staff were overly worried at 1-0. I think they were not content, but probably reluctantly willing to accept a 1-0 defeat, because it was on paper possibly your toughest game out of the three. I know that sounds strange when you still to play Brazil, but I actually think Morocco are probably just a little notch ahead of Brazil as a team at the moment. But so if you lose one, and I can see the same thing happening again against Brazil, if we go one down, and as long as it's only one, I think they'll be content to hang on, because there's still a strong possibility that a 1-goal defeat would take Scotland through into the knockout phase. And let's be honest, that is the aim here: get out the group by whatever means necessary. And I'm not saying that I like the kind of the way that Scotland have played, because it's not great to watch. I fully acknowledge that. But if you're Steve Clarke, nobody ever in history has taken Scotland to the knockout phase of a major tournament, and you stand on the cusp of doing that, and you're 1-0 down against Brazil with 20 minutes to go. Are you going to start then flooding the place with forwards? No, you're not. It's just not going to happen. So he'll try everything that he can to keep things tight and lose as few goals as possible, and hope that we maybe sneak one from a set play or something like that.
Do you think we potentially need to see a bit more from McTominay as well? I mean, I'm a huge fan of McTominay, but he's been flat these past two games.
Yeah, he hasn't. It's been surprising. I do think there's a lot of pressure on them. I mean, McTominay's obviously coming off a really strong season in Italy, but he'll know that from a Scotland perspective, he is one of the two main goal threats, him and John McGinn. Realistically, there's not an awful lot of more goals in that team, particularly if Shankland's on the bench. So that's a lot of pressure for anybody going into World Cup. And I think that's maybe played on his mind. There's possibly a little bit of fatigue in there as well. He has played a lot of football. Others, like John McGinn, for example, have had some breaks at different times. A couple of wee injuries have given him just a little rest that he's probably grateful for now. So, yeah, I do think everybody wants to see more from McTominay. But I think that comes as well from, you get the best out of McTominay if you have that creative element in your team. If you have a winger, whether it's Gannon Doak or Curtis on the other side, if you have people that are running at people and putting cross balls into the box, that's what McTominay thrives off. He's the one that'll be able to get in there from midfield and finish things off. Shankland likewise, John McGinn as well to an extent. But we, Scotland as a team, haven't done enough of that in this tournament so far, and that's why you're not seeing too much output from their attacking players.
Looking at the teams and the rest of the tournament, Lewis, just to kind of finish off today's episode, we've had a chance to see every team at least once. And obviously, as it stands, Cape Verde are the team that will probably be the favourites to win the tournament based on what we've seen so far, because they're just so great to watch. But look, which team and which player has impressed you most, and which of the teams, based on those games, would you back to win the tournament based on that first round of fixtures?
It's quite difficult, actually, because I came away from it last week thinking actually there wasn't really a standout team. I was really impressed by the United States. They're not going to win the tournament. They've just got a very good young team at the moment. Obviously, you had Spain were held to a draw. I didn't think France got going at all until midway through the second half against Senegal. You could say Argentina were pretty impressive against an Algerian side who came into the tournament in impressive form. They'd beaten the Dutch in the build-up to the tournament, and I thought they were going to give Argentina quite a stern test. But I thought Messi was in inspired form, so you'd probably say Argentina will certainly fancy their chances of retaining the trophy on the back of that performance. But yeah, I kind of felt a lot of the teams were much of a muchness. I do think the likes of Mexico and the United States will fancy their chances of going deep into the tournament, given their half of the draws on paper easier. You'd have to say. I think England will be pleased to have come through arguably their hardest test against the Croatians. At times, unconvincing, but got the job done. There's obviously going to be a reliance on Harry Kane. We all know that for goals. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of monitor his minutes going forward. I think there was talk that he might not play against Panama if they beat Ghana, and they're in a position to go through. So he's obviously going to be key to how far they go. But yeah, based on the initial round of fixtures, probably Argentina were the standout for me.
Same question to you, Barry, before we move on.
I think the Germans have looked good. I like the strength that they've got in their team, the pace. They've got goal threats from different areas of the park, and I've been well impressed with them. I actually think that Morocco will go very far in this tournament. I'm not going to say that I think they'll win it, but it wouldn't surprise me if they come very close. And Spain, I think as well, everybody's acknowledged that Spain have the capability to go far in this tournament, and they're a lot of people's favourites. I fully understand that. I watched the England game against Croatia, and it kills me to say it, but they were actually very good. So I think if they gather a bit of momentum in their remaining two group games, then they could push on as well. So yeah, those four are teams that have sort of stood out for me.
I think it's such a long tournament. Sometimes when you look at it, I think it's 8 games you need to win it. So it's almost like, do you start well at the start and kind of tail off, or do you stay strong the whole way through? Like, it's just, I suppose there was debate about the 48-team tournament. I've enjoyed it in many ways, and I think, as I said at the start of that question, I think Cape Verde have all the capabilities to go all the way. So, look, that's all for now. We've gone a little bit over than usual because there's plenty to talk about after a little weekend off. But just want to extend my thanks again to the listeners, of course, to Barry and Lewis for rejoining us. And if you're enjoying the show, please do like it, share it, subscribe to it, and ensure that every new episode that we do lands straight into your inbox every single day, depending on which podcast provider you use. But Barry, Lewis, listeners, everyone with us, thanks again. See you tomorrow.